talk about NEC 2026. I'm telling you what a blast the last 2 weeks have been. Working on NEC 2026, talking to so many different people, and I don't know, it's just absolutely insane. So today on IAEI News Live, we're going to talk 2026 edition of the National Electrical Code, specifically the first draft meetings that just occurred over the last 2 weeks, and it all starts now. All right, well, Rick Schawbel, good afternoon. David Engelhart, good afternoon. I think, I'm telling you what, there is a bunch of stuff that happened over the last 2 weeks. I sit on Code Panel 2, and I sit on Code Panel 10 for, I represent NEMA on Code Panel 2, and I represent Eaton on Panel 10. And so the meetings were just full of stuff. David Williams is on Panel 10 with me. He represents IAEI. Welcome, David. So I'll tell you what. So first off, before I do anything else, anything I say is started up here. Hopefully, started up here, came out here, and it's all from the heart, not on behalf of anybody else, not on behalf of NFPA, the Code Panel 210, or anybody else, not on behalf of Eaton, NEMA. I would even say not even on behalf of IAEI. It's all coming from here, okay? So nothing is rehearsed, nothing is planned. We're live. So Felix Sandoval in the house, Larry Griffith, thanks for joining us. So first things first, we have just had the first draft meetings. I want everybody to understand that what I'm going to talk about today is fluid. It is liquid. It may not pass. It may not work. It may not be a part of any resemblance of the National Electrical Code because we're following a process. That's the beautiful thing about the ANSI process for developing codes and standards. We get public inputs. We have debates that are public. We create a first revision that is public. The public can comment on the first revision. Then the panel meets for the public comment phase and debates again. And then finally, we produce a document that then can be changed through the NFPA annual meeting or at the NFPA annual meeting through motions of called NITMAM's Notice of Intent to Make a Motion, which then becomes a certified amending motion, which then is voted on by the body of those who are present at the meeting, who have been NFPA members for 6 months or more. And then finally, the very last thing you could possibly do is an appeal. I couldn't think of the word. Is an appeal to Standards Council. So we are at the very beginning of the process, and it's exciting to be a part of the process, and I want to make sure all of you are a part of this process too. Many of you, like David Williams and others who are watching this program, were there at the meetings last week, or engaged, or sitting on the code panel. Some of you may have been in attendance but aren't on a code making panel. And I would tell you that I would encourage you, if it is at all possible, to do something like that. It is very rewarding. You learn. I know I've learned a lot over the many years. Ken Castronovo, hello, welcome. Jody Wages, the Wages in the house. Larry Griffith, Felix Sandoval, all the way from Columbia. And Christine Porter, welcome. I saw most of you last week. I mean, me and Christine, we were there the day before I left. That was what? Wait, when did I leave? Saturday morning, Friday night. We were down having some drinks and cocktails and talking about the week and everything else. And you know what? What I love about those sessions, Christine, we have friendships, right? That go and transcend code, transcend the electrical industry. We build friendships with everybody who's engaged that have last for many years. I know on my drive back, it was 9.5 hours. I woke up. I did not set the alarm for Saturday morning, but automatically my alarm went off at 6 a.m. I got in my vehicle and at 8 o'clock, I didn't plan anything. I went down the lobby. I saw a bunch of people in the lobby. We chatted. And then I got in my vehicle. I looked at the clock and it said 8 o'clock in the morning, 8:01. Called Bobby Joe, let her know I was on my way. And boom, I hit the road. I talked to so many people on the way home. I talked to so many people. I talked to Donnie Cook for at least 2 hours of my trip. I think we dropped out once and had to call each other back, talking about everything, just everything. So I'm telling you, it's awesome. So anyway, at the meetings, some of the buzz, reorganization. I mean, I asked, in fact, so one of the things I'm doing, I recorded a session with Tim McClochie. And I also recorded, my session with Tim McClochie was for about 30 some minutes. I can't give or take. And what we did was we sort of went over some of the highlights, and I'm going to share that this week. In addition to my discussion with Tim McClochie, I also had the opportunity to talk to Brian Holland from NEMA about NEMA's participation in the NFPA development process. And if you're from Canada, God bless you, process. So we had and what was funny was we were sitting at the table and Brian goes, hey, I said to Brian, when are we going to go on, when am I going to get a recording and interview from you? He says, well, when do you want to do it? I'm like, I don't know, we want to do it now. So I threw the tripod out. You'll hear some background music you'll hear some background discussions, and that's because we were, I believe it was before, it might have been during lunch, I can't remember, but there was a whole group of individuals that were still sitting around chatting. I think I filtered most of that out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the McClochie and the Holland 2 sessions, I'm going to put those together, and I'm going to post those maybe this afternoon or tomorrow, one day this week, and I encourage you to watch that because great discussions with both of those individuals, and you will be impressed with the passion around Mr. Holland's discussion. So look forward to watching that. So let's do this. First, I want to talk about the process. If you look at nfpa.org/70next, you're going to see the cycle. And what you will see, the public inputs, remember, the public inputs closed September 7th of last year. The first draft report closes July 10th. So that means what occurred in the first draft will be posted. Now let's talk about the meeting, the ballots, and then the posting. So what will occur, what has occurred is last 2 weeks, we sat at a table, argued, debated, there was a little mud wrestling in there, all that kind of stuff. We all had a vote. Those voting members raised your hands, and we said you have whatever the simple majority. So for example, on panel 2, we had 20 voting members present at the table. A simple majority is 11. How do you calculate that? You take 20 divided by 2, add 1. So 10 is right down the middle. A simple majority is 10 plus 1, which is 11. So do that to any one of those, right? So 13, take an odd number. 13, 6.5, right, is your half. So you need 7 to pass if you have 13 voting members, etc. Now, that's just at the table. What has to happen next is, let's say, for example, we were going to say that this is a change occurred. I don't know. The first draft, the motion on the table was that that all inspections had to be reviewed by Jody Wages. Okay, and everybody loves Jody Wages, and then we said, hey, you know what? There's 20 people on the code panel, and 11 said we want Jody Wages to review all installations. Well, that will have to go to ballot. Now, this is what the general public doesn't see. I mean, necessarily. You'll see what was balloted and then what failed ballot, okay? But what will happen is we'll send out the ballots, and you'll be able to download the ballots and the preliminary results and then the final results of the ballots. So you'll be able to see, you'll have visibility into what passes ballot and what doesn't. The fact that you got a simple majority at the table has a high likelihood that you're not going to pass ballot, because what you need for ballot is 2/3. So this is when you get out the calculator, okay? So let's say that you had 23 code panel members. You divide 23 by 2, you get 11.5. That means you need 12 for a simple majority. So if I have 23 code panel members that are voting in the ballot phase, I need 2/3. I take 23 times 2 and divide that by 3. So I need 15 votes to be able to get a simple majority. So 15.3, or is that 16? That's actually 16. So 23 times 2/3, 23 times 2 divided by 3 is 15.33. I think you need 16. So you'll need 16 votes. If you have 23 voters, you need 16 votes to get a 2/3. And then what that means is, if you need 16 and you got 23, you need a lot of people to vote and support it. So the fact that you only got a simple majority at the table, you may not see it in the first draft. Because what will happen after the ballots, NFPA goes back to work. Anything that failed ballot will be removed, and then they will just publish what passes. All right, we got Robert from Omaha. We're back in the saddle, brother. Back in the saddle. Robert, David Williams, plus all the task group. Oh, that's exactly right, David. So before we even got to the table, before we even got to our meetings, task groups already occurred. Now, I chaired a task group on panel 2. I participated in many task groups, and as did many others who are part of the process. And even the general public can participate in task groups. You request to participate through the chair, and the chair can place you on a task group. Per regulations, the task groups don't have to be balanced. And you don't have to be a code panel member to be on a task group. So in some cases, the task groups, in some cases they weren't balanced, in some cases they were. The chairs try to balance, because the goal of the task group is such that when you get to the table, you don't just get simple majority, you get overwhelming support. And then if you get motions on the table from the task group that go uncontested by anybody, that's definitely going to get 2/3 of a vote if it's an FR, first revision. If it was not a resolve, which is basically a nice way of saying reject, right? So what is where we're at in the stage? We've had all the task group work. We sat down at the meeting. We had our debates and wrestling and you know, fighting in the bar and discussions out at the coffee pot and all that stuff. And now we're waiting for ballots. Then the ballot will continue. So what will happen is all the code panel members will get a ballot and we'll have to vote. And then they do what they call a recirculation. And what that does, what I like about recirculation is, say I voted to support something or I voted against a first revision. Only the first revisions will be balloted. It's another, and I'll have something else to say about that. So let's say that I vote for or against a first revision. And then they recirculate. And I look over and I see Christine Porter. And she's got a comment. She's got a ballot statement that'll knock your socks off. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I never thought about what she said. I may want to change my vote. I may find that everybody is putting valuable comments in their ballot statements that help me either they help me reaffirm my motion of support for that or change my mind. So yes, only the principal counts, plus the PIs that move from one task group to another task group, which adds to the workload. Oh, absolutely, Clint. There is just so much that occurs. That's why, in my opinion, I tell people this. If you show up at the table and you're not prepared, you're not going to know what the heck you're doing. I mean, how do you vote? How do you engage? How do you argue and debate if you are not prepared? And the best way to get prepared for your code panel meetings, if you're on a code panel, is to engage in the discussion. Oh, David Engelhart. Hey, Brian Rock in the house. David, I'm looking forward to see the results of 3 PIs they submitted for 210.8F and 230.85. So, Mr. Engelhart, we will start with you since you were bold enough to go there. I'm going to go to view. I'm in TerraView. I can't show TerraView. I apologize, but all this stuff is copyrighted and all that jazz, but I can talk about it. I mean, what are they going to do? Sue me? Probably. All right. So 3 PIs and 210.8F. Let's take a look at Mr. Engelhart. I know we made a change in 210.8F. You may or may not like it, but let's see. I don't know what your PI numbers were, David Engelhart. There's 210.8. I can't see where's 210.8F? I can see my PIs. Let me look at the first revision. We have a first revision. And there are 2 public inputs that we made them off of. One was Don Gannier. And the other, who was this on? Aham. Oh, wait, you went 50 to 60. Ooh, wait. Yes. So we did that, David, as a ballotable detail. And I'll tell you how to find the ballotable details. So for all of you panel members out there, let me do this. I am going to scroll. I wonder if I can do this. I can blow it up. All right. Here's what I'm going to try. iPad, monitor. I'm going to try something here. Nope. Monitor 1. So let me do this. Here's what I'm going to do. Plus video. Is it a video capture device? macOS screen capture. I'm going to try this. Screen capture 2. Whoa, hold on. Window. Terra. There we go. Here we go, gentlemen and ladies. I am going to show you how to find the I'm going to show you how to find the ballotable details. So if you go to the, where's it at? Down here on the bottom. So let me blow this up a little bit. Let me do this, and let me do this. You hopefully can see this. Here we go. Down at the bottom, when you scroll down to the very bottom of Terra, you're going to see two things: globals, view existing globals, and then details, view existing. When you click the detail, that is when you will be able to see all of the details that were identified as ballotable details. Now, why would we do a ballotable detail? Let's say, for instance, terrible view. Rick, you know terrible view, don't you? That's, man. That is what do they call that? A loving term? A term of endearment. There you go. It's another words for saying bless his heart. So when you go there, and why would we do a ballotable detail? So we would do a ballotable detail because if you have something that might be controversial, you're going to want to lump that in and get it balloted on its own. Now, when they ballot it, if it gets support, it's lumped into the overall first revision. So in 210.8, for example, you might have different, different ballotable details. Like say 210.8A, you might say there's a change in list item 1, item 2, item 3, and each of those are ballotable details. If the change in 1 and 3 pass but 2 doesn't, in the final overall first revision, you'll have both what passed, and those line item details will be in what passed, and what didn't pass will not be in the first revision, but it will be reported as one first revision. So let's take a look at your 50 to 60. And I believe we passed it. 210.8F, I'm going to take a look. Yes, we did. So, Mr. David, we went to 60. So we said the branch circuit rating was increased from 50 amps to 60 amps as solutions are readily available and the hazard is the same. I think that's the important thing, right? So the important thing to remember is the hazard's the same. The hazard doesn't mysteriously go away from when you go to 60 amps. And the other key item was that we have solutions on the market to work on those circuits. We do 60 amp spall panels every day of the week, twice on Sunday. So it is what it is. All right. Terror view. Yeah, majority wages. All right. So, David, that one was accepted, and that was your public input 3285. So in the House, we got that one done. What was your other public input, David? You said you had public at 3285. Did you have another one? 3285. 3285. You said you had 3 PIs. Well, I'll tell you what all right, so let's do this. I'm going to take a look at 110. And you know why? Because I haven't looked at 110. And I'm going to look down through Terra, and I'll tell you what I see. Now remember, none of this may pass the ballot phase. None of it. But there's a good chance, right? Depends on whether it got a simple majority at the table or if it got overwhelming support. All right, 3476, 3475. Okay, let's take, no, all right, let's take a look, David. And now here's another way. What you do is you go to up at the very top in TerraView, you'll see where it says public reports. You click on report on public inputs, comments, NITMAMs for NFPA 70. That is way up there. And then what you do is you select public inputs and you hit 3476, and you hit search. Oh, David, here we go. You wanted to put, okay, I'm glad you talked about this one. So 3476 was a public input in Article 230, 85A1. This is your emergency disconnect, right? You wanted to add an exception. Where a shunt trip button is installed, it too shall be located in a readily accessible outdoor location. And you related it to another public input, 3475. Let's take a look at 3475. You wanted to strike 1 and 2 family dwelling units and say all structures. And you wanted to an emergency disconnect means shall be installed, and you had an exception. An exterior mounted shunt trip button for related shunt trip breakers shall be permitted. Both of those were resolved, and I'll tell you why, David. We had this. So on this one here, so two issues. What you were trying to do here was go to all structures. And the code panel statement says, no substantiation has been provided to extend the emergency disconnect to all structures beyond 1 and 2 family dwelling units, or to allow for shunt trips to serve as emergency disconnecting means. So 2 parts to this. First is expanding to all structures. Yeah, you're looking for the expansion to all structures. The challenge there is the drive on this was from firefighters, and they were having trouble with residential dwelling units. So, and residential dwelling units was relatively easy. Why? Because the services are pretty small. When you get to commercial buildings, you could have 3,000 amp service, right? So, and multiple services. So my guess, here's my guidance, my suggestion is to reach out to the firefighters. Find out if this is something they see as beneficial. David, I would reach out to firefighters, find out if they can say, if they can help with substantiation. Because your substantiation just basically said this should apply to all structures, especially for those underground services that terminate the service equipment within the building, not just 1 and 2 family dwelling units. We need more to go on. So I would say you could reach out to Donnie Cook. Donnie Cook, his son is a firefighter, and it was the group. I'm just saying reach out to Donnie Cook because he's an IAEI member, and his son is a firefighter, and his son helped with some of the panel statements or some of the substantiation for the dwelling units. I don't know if his son fights fires in commercial buildings, though. You might want to reach out to somebody like in New York City or other areas to find out the challenges in those types of structures. That's to justify expansion. The other issue with the shunt trip, and I'll tell you why I know this is a concern, and we really didn't put it in our panel statement, which we should have. The problem or the challenge with a shunt trip, I'm not going to say problem because I think there are ways to get this done. If you have a shunt trip button, and let's say the fire takes out the conductors to the circuit breaker, there is no positive indication that when you press the button, anything actually happened. Now, I know there's language, I believe there's language in 445. I think there's language in 445 I'm trying to remember what other, there's around generators, and it might be in the transfer switch, it might be in Article 700. In one of those, I think it's 700. Now that my memory is coming back, because I believe it is a transfer switch thing. I think it's a transfer switch thing where you have to have, you have to be able to ascertain the integrity of the connection with the tripping function on the generator. Or I think it's, oh man, I'm not going to look up. Take a look in Article 700. There is a provision in the code recognizing the importance of the integrity of the circuit. Yes, smash the like button now. Act now. So you have to look in, I think it's Article 700, 701, I don't know, it's somewhere back there where we have the integrity, and that's the issue with the shunt trip. In fact, when the emergency disconnect, they called it a firefighter disconnect when it first was introduced to the National Electrical Code. It failed at the annual meeting because of a shunt trip button that was permitted. So you need some additional language in there, David, and I think you could get some help from I think it's Article 700. Let's talk offline. I'll share with you what I feel there. But to expand all structures, you're going to need some help, and you're going to need some substantiation. So that's why both of those went down. All right. Similar to TIA 1767, asking for emergency disconnect for EVSE and wireless power transfer equipment. Rick, yeah, so that's a good point. And I know, let's take a look. I'm going to go in TerraView and take a look in chapter 625, I think. Yep. Electric vehicle power transfer system. Let's take a look at it. Let me show you something. So, listing requirements are now in 625.2. That didn't change much. We have, I'm looking for disconnects. I'm looking for the disconnects. We have some, 625.41 is called continuous loads. EVSE and wireless power transfer equipment, including bidirectional EVSE and WPTE, shall be considered continuous loads. Bada bing, bada boom. They removed that 125% because once you say continuous loads, you know how to deal with it because of the ampacity, right? When we look at the ampacity calculations, it tells you have to take 125% times the continuous, 100% times the non-continuous. So I don't need 125% throughout the code. All you need to do is say, this is a continuous load. Rating, they made some changes in 625.42 rating. The service, feeder, and branch circuits supplying EVSE shall have sufficient rating, to supply the load served. Well, I'll be a horse's patoot. Unless the overall rating of the installation can be limited through controls. Hence, energy management systems, another big discussion point for 2026. Energy management systems is getting a lot of attention and a lot of love. So we're seeing now, and the reason is because what are we doing with an energy management system? We are relying on a set point to size feeders, services, branch circuits, and equipment. And when you're now, remember, historically, energy management has been around for a long time, right? We have energy management in In ASHRAE 90.1, we have the requirements for switched receptacles to turn things off. We have requirements in ASHRAE that says you got to turn these lights automatically off if you don't have occupancy. That's not to do a load calculation. That is to perform energy management. And there are some companies that'll do an energy management load shedding to avoid hitting peak demands. Well, that's fine and dandy. But the moment you rely on that to size a circuit or a feeder or equipment, now you're into a completely different use case. So EMS got some love. So 625.42a, Energy Management Systems, it says all EMS used to provide load management of EVSE shall comply with 750.30, and we're going to go take a look at that, and the maximum equipment load on a service, feeder, and branch circuit shall be the maximum load permitted by the EMS. So you see what I mean? We're relying on the EMS to size our feeders now. That's a safety function. The EMS shall be permitted to be integral to one piece of equipment. That's all existing language. Network residing software that directs and limits EVSE output. This is new. Network residing software that directs and limits EVSE output shall be permitted to be used as an energy management system for fleets of 3 or more vehicles, provided that the software complies with all of the following. Programming has to be based on fleet modeling, including the assessment of vehicle loading, travel distance, efficiency. Travel distance? Travel distance. Why travel distance? Oh, probably because if I know that this fleet, my vehicle is going to be traveling for 300 and some miles, it's going to need a full charge. So, but if I know a vehicle is only going to be putting around town, I may not need a full charge. Cool. Efficiency, battery degradation. Don't degrade your batteries. All right? Be good to your batteries. They've been good to you. And the environment. Rick. Rick, yes. Reach out to me, please. 627. I'll talk about that in a second. The EMS shall communicate directly with EVSE and include communication failure alarms. What we've got here is failure to communicate. That's what the announcement has to say. Loss of EMS communication shall not result in EVSE loads greater than the load permitted by the service, feeder, or branch circuit rating. Oh, it is so awesome. So we're covering when we're getting our set points from the cloud. An EVSE with a current adjustment setting is permitted if it has restricted access. The adjustment setting is accomplished by at least one of the methods permitted in 750.30 Charlie. And we're going to go again. We're going to go look at 30. The adjusted current setting has an impact on the rating label. This is important. This was hugely debated. Circuit integrity is mostly in 760. All right, David. There was something with a transfer switch. We'll take a look at that. So in accordance with so it says, if the adjusted current setting has an impact on the rating label, those changes shall be in accordance with manufacturer's instructions, and the adjusted current setting shall appear on the field installed rating label. I love it. I love it. In accordance with 110.21. So here was the issue. The previous text in 625 said, hold on. I didn't mean this to focus on EVs, but you know what? When the shoe fits. So 625 rating, the EVSE shall have sufficient rating to supply the load served. Electric vehicle charging loads shall be considered to be continuous loads for the purpose of this article. Sir, that's not the right one. Oh yeah, here it is, energy management. Here it is, B. EVSE with restricted access to an ampere adjusting means complying with 750.30C shall be permitted. If adjustments have an impact on the rating of label, those changes shall be in accordance with manufacturer's instructions, and the adjusted rating shall appear on the rating label. So this was the problem. This is what they fixed. And great job, Rick, great job. So this is what they fixed. They said, look, I mean, as a manufacturer of EV equipment, I can't put on my label what you're going to adjust it to. So what are the options? And I'll tell you, I had a discussion with Joe Bablow on this and a bunch of other people. When you adjust and change the setting in the electric vehicle is probably, I'd say, in fact, I was talking to Donnie Cook about this. And Donnie said, hey, they do the same thing on HVAC equipment. They'll have a rating in there, and if you install a certain type of blower motor or accessory modules that draw more power, they give you these stickers to put on the label. And he sent me a bunch of photos for the HVAC equipment where there were field modifications done because that was the plan. And the products are designed that way, and so you field mark what you have adjusted it to. So HVAC equipment does the same daggone thing, and different manufacturers do it different ways. Some manufacturers tell you they'll put like check marks. Now I sound like I'm from Boston. Check marks. They'll put check marks on the label where you say, well, it's this amps or this amps, And so what they did here was they said, look, the adjusted current setting, if the adjusted current setting has an impact on the rating label, the changes shall be in accordance with manufacturer's instructions. So you got to follow manufacturer's instructions. And the adjusted current rating has to appear on a field installed rating label in accordance with 110.21. That is magic. It's beautiful because now, when you make that adjustment in the field, you will have to place that label on what the rating of that equipment is. And why is that important? Because we size our feeders that way, and we size our branch circuits that way. So you need to know what that rating is. And I love what Panel 12 did there. This is good stuff. All right. There's the disconnect. So we started down this road to get to that disconnect. So 625.43 disconnecting means EVSE and WPTE, that is wireless power transfer equipment. EVSE is electric vehicle supply equipment, shall be provided with one or more disconnecting means in accordance with 625.43 A and B. So A is equipment disconnects for permanently connected. So this is permanently connected EVSE equipment. Oh, I remember this one. Oh my gosh. Rick, I remember this discussion. I was pulling my hair out in the back of the room watching this. This was a discussion and a half. If you're never at a code panel meeting, you don't know the frustration of sitting, even if you're at the table and you listen to discussions and you're like, oh my God, no, that's either that's wrong or we've already gone down this road. Okay, this is one of those. They went on for a very long time. So for permanently mounted EVSE and I keep wanting to say wastewater treatment plants, WPTE, wireless power transfer equipment, you have to have the disconnect has to be provided and installed in a readily accessible location. If it's remote from the equipment, you have to have a plaque or a directory that basically says where everything is at. And then they added, for cord and plug connected EVSE and WPTE with a rating not exceeding 60 amps or not exceeding 150 volts to ground, the cord and plug shall be permitted to serve as the disconnecting means. So what they were trying to address in 625.43a is when you use the cord as a disconnecting means. And I'll tell you where the debate was. And I was like, it was like I was in a tennis match watching, boom, to boom, Da boom, da boom. Okay, so there was a group of individuals that basically said, look, we don't need to say 60 amps or more and not exceeding 150 volts to ground. All you need to say is that cord and plug connected EVSE, the cord and plug is the disconnect. And the reason they were saying that was because if you scroll down, or if you go to where in 625.44a and b, you cannot have a cord and plug connected EVSE greater than 60 amps. The only things that can be cord and plug connected are 60 amps and less. You have in A1, you have the non-locking 2-pole, 15 or 20 amps, 30 or 50. Because it says, portable equipment shall be connected to the premises wiring system by one or more of the following methods. There's nothing in here for greater than 60 amps. So you can't have a 60, you can't have like a 100 amp, or the one gentleman at the table said, if I have a 1,000 amp EVSE and it's cord and plug connected, you're telling me I can plug and unplug this under power as a disconnect. And I believe somebody at the table accurately said, you're not permitted to have a cord and plug connected EVSE greater than 60 amps. So anyway, so they added that to the parent text, or the text of 625.43a, which is perfectly fine. It doesn't do anything bad. It just states the reality, which somebody could say, hey, it adds to transparency and usability. I'm good with it. And then you have 625.43b, emergency shutoff for permanently connected EVSE and WPTE. One or more clearly identified shutoff devices or electrical disconnects shall be provided and shall meet all of the following: be installed in a readily accessible location in sight from the equipment. It has to disconnect power to all EVSE. This is another one. So I think we're going to need to give this one a little of attention in the second draft. What this says, it says for permanently connected EVSE and wireless power transfer equipment, one or more clearly identified emergency shutoff devices or electrical disconnects have to be provided, and they have to meet all of the following. Item number 2, it says disconnect power to all EVSE and wireless power transfer equipment within sight of the emergency shutoff. So that means everything within sight of the emergency disconnect, which actually is not bad. The way it read before, it didn't have that, and they fixed it apparently, because the way it was worded before, you have to disconnect all EVSE and WPTE equipment, which means you've got to disconnect if regardless of where it's at on the facility. You could have it all over the place. That one disconnect has to disconnect everything. So what they're trying to get at is, if you are at the EVSE and you need to kill power quickly and you look and see the disconnect, you run to that disconnect, hit the button, and it will kill power to all the EVSE in that area. If there was another button, say on the back of the building for all the equipment in the back, you wouldn't see it, so you wouldn't run to it, right? But in any case, it also has to be marked emergency shutoff. It has to be manually reset, and it has to disconnect all ungrounded conductors. So that's the disconnect requirement. Okay, so I haven't been looking at the comments. So let me look at the comments. Boy, sounds like it'll be submitted public comments. Yes, Rick, I'm your proposed. Okay, 627, I'll talk about that in a second. Residential lighting dropping down to 2 VA per square foot, but not for minimum quantity of branch circuits. Yes, I remember that. So the concern, Christine, was, I'm not even going to get into it, because I need everybody to look at that language. There is a desire to reduce the calculations for a dwelling unit, which I'm not sure if it's a good or bad thing. And the reason I say that is we have all of this EV ready thought in our head. My concern with going from, say, a 200 amp service to a 100 amp or 60 amp service, trying to drop the size of the service, how do you add vehicles in the future? I don't know if it's a good idea. So I think we need to all look, and even the stuff that didn't pass, there were a bunch of public inputs that did not pass because we need to understand that future ready, all that good stuff discussion. But look at 220, take a look at the load calculations, especially if you do exams. If you're involved with exams and you write exams for qualifications, you're going to want to see all of those, because in my opinion, a lot of what 220 has, you see on exam and you probably don't necessarily see it in practice, right? But in my opinion, we exceed the requirements in 220 very often, because 220 will tell you if you do a calculation based upon what's here. I forget what section, 220 something, 220 something, it says it may not be adequate. So I believe, go above and beyond when it comes to sizing services and things like that for future growth and all that other good stuff. But in any case, take a look at that. 627. So I'll tell you about 627. All right, 627. I made a public input to 627 because we have been seeing requests to power boats, electric boats. And when I looked at the definition, so I'll tell you the scenario of how things occurred. I get a phone call from a product line, and my product line says, hey, we're getting all of these requests for charging electric boats, and they're very specific. They want a regular EV charger with the same connector that you see on vehicles. And the question was, A, is it going to work with the boats? We don't even know what, when you see it in a specification, you don't know if the engineer who's designing the system understands that. If you do marinas on a daily basis, and that's what you do for a living, you're not doing electric vehicle chargers. You may not know that the connector for a Tesla is different than a connector for another type of vehicle and manufacturer, and the connector for a boat might be something even different. So they said, hey, we got a bunch of questions. One, what's the connector we need? B, what are the requirements for the installation? And C, we need standards. So, because it's on a marina, and my journey there led me to talk to a bunch of different individuals, and it was like I opened a can of worms, and every worm was different than the other. So what I learned is there's farm equipment. John Deere has a tractor they're coming out with, that they have, that's an electric. And the reason that the farming guys like it is not necessarily because they want to be green. It's because they like not having to worry about spilling fuel in the field, which makes the soil ungood. So there's concerns about diesel fuel and things like that. Although, I don't know about a tractor that's electric, how long it'll last and all that jazz, but they're out there. So, and then the other thing was Cat was coming out with a product that was like a backhoe and a front lift that was electric. So we don't have anything in the code to address that. So panel 12, and looks like we're going to have a committee. And we're going to have a committee that looks at these other types of electrical propelled equipment. So All right, so let's do a little bit more. We said we were going to go to 750. I'm going to go to chapter 7. 750 is on energy management systems. So we go to 750, and remember the reference was 750.30. Oh my goodness, there are a lot of changes. See attached for legislatively correct changes. First revision number 8095. So 750.30 is load management. Energy management systems shall be permitted to monitor and control electrical loads and sources in accordance with A through C. And remember, we referenced C, capacity of branch circuit feeder or services. An energy management system shall not cause a branch circuit feeder or service to be overloaded. If an EMS is used to limit the current on a conductor, you have to have a current set point. You have to make sure that you address when the system malfunctions. You have to make sure that the settings are sealed but readily available and accessible. They have to be accessible. And you have to have markings. So that is what 750.30 is all about. So, and we're going to talk more. We're going to talk more about the changes. And I want to try to keep you all engaged with the process and the topics of discussion, because here's the thing. What we are learning during this process, if you do code adoption and you're on a 17 code looking at the 2020 and maybe considering going to the 2023, all that jazz, there are things that occur during the code cycles that address technology. 726, 727 is a good example of that. If you're on the 2020 code or the 2023 code and you are installing electric powered boats, you're installing charging equipment on a marina, you have to understand there are no code requirements that address that scenario. So panel 7, I did a presentation to panel 7, and there were gentlemen who were talking. There was one gentleman who said, look, he says, I'm putting this equipment on marinas and I'm putting it on docks. And I'll tell you what's going on. He's sitting down with the AHJ and they're trying to figure out, what do we do? Because there's no code requirements around it. So they're making requirements. And then, the design engineer has to keep the inspector happy, and the inspector has to have, the inspector's going to sign off. And the inspector has to say, look, I have to feel comfortable with this installation. You're putting DC on a marina, and you got conductors going down into the water to power a boat. What are the restrictions? How are we going to handle this? So they do what they can, but we need language. We need clear, concise language to provide direction, because it helps everybody involved. And the last thing anybody wants is current in the water that could cause electric shock drownings. That is a problem we don't want to propagate into the future. And hence why codes and standards have to keep up. And hence why state adoptions have to keep up. I can't stress that enough. If we're not adopting the latest additions across the country, you're missing requirements that are important for life safety. And it puts the contractor at risk. It puts the owner at risk. It puts inspectors at risk. It puts people who interact with the power distribution system or operate in and around whatever, whether it's a structure or a marina or whatever it is, at risk. And it puts manufacturers at risk. We all have a stake in that. We all have irons in the fire with regard to with regard to the benefits of code adoption and code enforcement. And we have to work together and make sure that happens. And I think awareness. These discussions that are occurring during the 2026 code cycle can help you with implementing the 2023 cycle and the 2020 cycle code requirements, because it gives you the depth of knowledge. It's not just a section that you have to follow blindly. You've got to understand the goal that we're trying to achieve. So 727 and a lot of these others. So I was going to start in chapter 1, and I'm already at an hour, but I'm going to go to 110, and I'm just going to see if there's any major stuff in here. 110.10. Whoa. 110.10 was circuit impedance, short circuit current ratings, and other characteristics. So they changed 110.10 to be available fault current, short circuit current ratings, and other characteristics. And the changes they made, the overcurrent protected devices, equipment, they erased the total impedance. Equipment short circuit current ratings and other characteristics of the circuit to be protected shall be selected and coordinated with the available fault current to permit the circuit protective devices used to clear a fault to do so without extensive damage to the electrical equipment of the circuit. And they removed, this fault shall be assumed to be either between two or more of the circuit conductors or between any circuit conductor and the equipment. Ground. Oh, you know why? You know why they took that out? Because they used the defined term available fault current. You don't need the description of how the fault's going to occur, because you use the defined term available fault current. So 110.10 got attention and love. And I don't know. Do I like what I'm seeing? Maybe. First revision 9081. Let's take a look. Where else? They deleted in 110.12, they deleted cables and conductors. Why did they do that? They deleted 110.12c. They said in the parent text, electrical equipment shall be installed in a professional and skillful manner. Remember that, you used to say workmanship-like manner. Now, first revision 9093. The removal of subsection C, first level subdivision C, and the related informational notes eliminates repetitive requirements throughout the code based on public input number 252 submitted by Mr. Jackson. And he said it was added in 2020. That effort failed, yet this section was still, so it's already back there in 300. So, all right, so it's just duplicate. Nothing major, nothing to see here. Ignore the man behind the screen. All right, high leg marking. On a 4-wire delta connected system where the midpoint of one phase winding is grounded, only the conductor or bus bar having the higher phase voltage to ground shall be durably and permanently marked orange in color. That's new language right there. Orange in color. But they just moved it. They said by an outer, so that's not new language. They just moved orange in color from one part to the other. All right. 110.16. Holy crap. 110.16. Boy, did it got, wow. 110.16 got a lot of changes. So let's take a look. It went from arc flash hazard warning to arc flash hazard. 110.16, arc flash hazard. Arc flash hazard marking. All right, so they deleted A and B, and now it says, in other than dwelling units, a permanent arc flash marking shall be field or factory applied to service equipment and feeder supplied equipment such as switchboards, switchgear, enclosed panel boards, industrial control panels, meter sockets, enclosures, and motor control centers. The marking shall meet the requirements in 110.21b be located so as to be clearly visible to qualified persons and be in accordance with the applicable industry practice containing the following: the nominal system voltage, the arc flash boundary, the available incident energy or minimum or required level of personal protective equipment, the date the label was applied. This is huge. This is huge. I'm seeing this for the first time, and I am impressed. What did the panel statement say? I love this. OMG. I'm not even looking at the comments. No wonder could get info boat manufacturer regarding minimum condition that they are working from. Been there for non-coded. Yes. Tom, got to drop off. Edgy Robert from Omaha. Thank you. All right, this is my last one. This one, which is 110.14, arc flash labels, aligns with NFPA 70E. And we had a discussion in panel 10, and it was Mr. Sparks. We were talking about 24087 and 24067 about lowering it to 800 amps. And Mr. Sparks said, it was a profound statement. He said, I don't know why we're doing this. We should just be saying you need to keep the incident energy below a certain number. And forget about how you achieve that. And he was 110% correct in my book. And this change in 110.14 can help us in panel 10 get there. They expanded the labeling, the arc flash labeling, to all switchboards, switchgear, enclosed panel boards, industrial control panels, meter socket enclosures, and motor control centers. You now have to put an arc flash label on all of those. That is where the original submitter was going back in 2002. It took us 21 years to get to where the submitter was going in 2002. If you look at the public input, and we'll look at this maybe next time. If you look at the public input to 110.16 in the 2002 edition, you will see, what was his name? Can't remember his name. You will see that he was seeking exactly where panel 1 went this cycle. Hallelujah. That is a huge step forward in safety. To get an arc flash label and all this equipment is huge, is great in my book. And then we can leverage this possibly in 24087 and 24067. Because in my... All right, so that's it. Fort Pitt, we had a great discussion. And it is 1 hour and 8 minutes. I don't want to keep you too long. If you are still watching this, Fred B., Christine Porter, who else we got here? I know we lost Robert from Omaha, Brian Rock. He's driving and his cords are not that long. Oh, I love it. Mr. Wages, Cool Hand Luke, David Englehart. I'm going to look up David. I know it was around transfer switches. I'll take a look and see where that was and give you some language there. And in my opinion, you have to do integrity. You've got to consider the integrity of the circuit. You want to make sure that when you look at that button and you hit it, you know it opened the service. Once you do that, I think you got something. And on larger construction, larger buildings, that's the only way to get it done. The only other debate that you're going to have is putting a disconnect out there on the outside of a building, say in downtown New York, where somebody can go. So we're going to have to address that. All right. Beautiful. All right. Listen, I've talked too much, and I've got to end this program. So I really enjoyed this session. I hope you did. I really appreciate Rick and everybody else who joined in for the discussion around the 2026 code cycle. Remember that everything is fluid. It's all water. Okay. Anything can change. Nothing is setting in stone, but you are a part of the process. And I thank you for what you do for the electrical industry and for electrical safety. I want all of you to stay safe, especially if you're out there working on the job sites, you're inspecting, pulling wire, whatever it is you're doing. Remember, you've got safety is job one. Is your first priority. Your top priority is getting home to your family and friends. And I want to see all of you next week on IAEI News Live. Mr. McClochie, I believe, is going to be with me on IAEI News Live next week. So join in. Michael Hofkin, thank you. Felix Sandoval, you're the man. Larry Griffith, switches be trippin'. I love it. Switches be trippin'. That is a cool name, brother or sister. I don't know. Switches be trippin'. Any news where second draft is? Second draft. So here's what's going to happen. So the next step in this is you have to wait for the posting of the first draft, which will be July 10th. When July 10th, be watching your computer. Get up in the morning early. Switches be tripping. Get up at 6 a.m. and go out to nfpa.org/70next and start looking at the first draft, because they will open public comments on July 10th. Public comments will close August 28th. So public comments will close August 28th. The second draft meetings will be in October, I believe. October of 2024. And then they will post the results of the second draft March 21st of 2025. Tom Blevins, I love it. I love the name. Switches be tripping. Tom, I tell you what, it takes a guy with a name Tom to come up with a name like Switches be tripping. How do you get in on code panel meetings? Well, Fred B, you got to show up. Here's what you can do. You can participate and be virtual on task group meetings. I would highly suggest find a panel that you're interested in and get invited to the task group work. You won't be able to say anything, but you can listen. And there's a lot to be said about listening. And then if you want to participate, when the second draft meetings occur, you can be a guest in the room. But I'm telling you, bring some popcorn, bring a comfy chair, because you're just going to sit around and watch the debates. You can talk to panel members after, during breaks and during lunch. Go out to dinner with a few guys and gals that are, people that you find interesting and have things to say, if they can give you some of their time during that week or those 2 weeks. I made myself available. I called it holding court in the bar. So after the meetings, I would go into the bar area and sit down with my computer. I'd order my food. I pretty much ate in the hotel, pretty much. I went out to eat a couple times. But I tried to make myself available, and we had chat sessions. So, you can always, you got to show up to the meeting. That's the key. There's no virtual option, at least not that I'm aware of. So stay tuned for more on that from NFPA. So stay engaged. In fact, subscribe to the IAEI's YouTube channel, and I'll tell you, as we get closer, when everything comes out, as we learn more, we will make sure all of you out there are aware. So subscribe to the channel. We'll let you know. All right, everybody. Make sure those switches not be tripping, and we will see you next week. Take care, stay safe, and please stay healthy. Check out this new the new video at the end. I think you're going to like it. See you next week.